Tonight we drift into a city at the end of the world, not at its edge exactly, but at its conclusion. A place where every grand human dream has come to rest in ruins, where ideology itself has grown weary, where meaning collapses under its own weight, and still, somehow, life persists. This is Revachol, and within its streets lies a meditation on failure, on memory, on the fragile systems we build to make sense of an indifferent universe. If you enjoy these quiet explorations of philosophy through fiction, I invite you to like and subscribe. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is rest, settle in, and let the broken streets of Revachol carry you into contemplation. Let's begin. There is a district called Martinez in a city called Revachol. It sits at the edge of an insula, a landmass floating in the void, separated from all other lands by something called the Pale. Within Martinez, buildings lean against each other like exhausted workers after a double shift. The paint has peeled, the streets crack and buckle. Rain pools in potholes that will never be filled. This is not decay from neglect exactly. This is decay as a natural state, entropy made architectural. Revachol was once the jewel of a monarchy, the suzerainty, a kingdom that stretched its influence across the known world. Wealth flowed through its harbour like water. Aristocrats in silk governed from palaces, while workers died in factories. The system was old, rigid, supposedly eternal. It collapsed anyway. 49 years before the game begins, revolution swept through these streets. The people rose up. They tore down the old order. For 6 years, Revachol became a commune, a place where workers governed themselves, where the future seemed bright with possibility. Then came the coalition. An alliance of nations, capitalist and moralist, arrived with ships and soldiers. They crushed the commune methodically, completely. What remained was placed under foreign occupation, turned into what they called a special administrative region. Revachol lost even the right to its own sovereignty. The coalition allows the locals to manage their own police force, the Revachol citizens' militia, but little else. Foreign companies extract profit. Foreign governments make policy. The people of Revachol exist in a state of permanent aftermath. This is the world where Disco Elysium unfolds. Not a world of adventure and heroism, but one of exhaustion. A world where grand narratives have all been tried and found wanting. Walk through Martinez and you walk through layers of historical sediment. The fishing village predates all modern ideologies, clinging to older ways of kinship and tradition. The church stands hollow, its bells long since melted down for weapons that solved nothing. The whirling in rags, the hostel where the game begins, carries the mark of better days now faded. Everywhere you look, there is evidence of what was and can never be again. You play as a detective who wakes in this city with no memory. Not just amnesia of who he is, but amnesia of the world itself. He does not remember his name. He does not remember the country he lives in. He does not remember what money is or what a police officer does. This is not simple memory loss. This is obliteration. The man who was has been so thoroughly destroyed by alcohol and drugs and self-loathing that almost nothing remains. Even his body betrays him, his health degraded, his motor functions impaired. Yet from this state of absolute negation, you must somehow solve a murder. A man has been found hanged behind the hostel. The case is politically sensitive, tied to a strike by dock workers against a corporation called the Wild Pines Group. As you investigate, you begin to piece together not just the mystery of this dead man, but the mystery of yourself. Who were you? Why did you do this to yourself? What broke you so completely that forgetting seemed like the only option? The game gives you a partner, Lieutenant Kim Kitsuragi. He is everything you are not. Steady, professional, measured. He arrives from another precinct because you are supposed to be a skilled detective, someone called in to handle difficult cases. What he finds instead is a man in the wreckage of a 3-day bender, a man who cannot remember how to put on pants. Kim adapts. He becomes your anchor, a voice of reason in the chaos of your fragmented mind. He is kind without being soft, disappointed but not cruel. In many ways, Kim represents what you could be if you could just hold yourself together. But holding yourself together is the challenge, because you are not just a detective with amnesia. You're a detective whose mind speaks to him in 24 distinct voices, each representing a different aspect of your psyche. Logic whispers deductions. Pain threshold tells you to endure. Electrochemistry urges you towards substances. Drama insists everything is performance. These voices do not simply offer suggestions. They argue with each other, contradict themselves, pull you in conflicting directions. This is Disco Elysium's central innovation, its skill system. Instead of measuring your abilities in abstract numbers, your skills are characters, personalities, philosophies. When you invest points in a skill, you're not just making yourself better at something. You're giving that voice more power over you. High logic makes you brilliant at connecting facts but can lead to cold, inhuman conclusions. High empathy lets you feel what others feel but can overwhelm you with their pain. Every strength is also a weakness. Every insight comes with a cost. The game understands something profound about consciousness. We're not unified selves. We're collections of competing impulses, memories, desires, and fears, all loosely organized under the illusion of a single identity. The detective's amnesia has simply made this multiplicity explicit. Without the coherent narrative of a past to bind them together, these voices run wild. They compete for dominance. They offer conflicting interpretations of every situation. To be this detective is to experience the self as a parliament rather than a monarchy, a place where nothing is ever fully decided. As you explore Martinez, you encounter the people who live in this failure. Evrat Clare, the union boss, a man whose body has swollen with wealth and corruption, but who still claims to represent the workers. Joyce Messier, the representative of Wild Pines, articulate and thoughtful, genuinely kind even as she works for a corporation that will grind workers to dust for profit. The Hardy Boys, dock workers who act as vigilantes, keeping a kind of order in the absence of real law. Ruby, an anarchist who helped stage a cover-up, terrified of authorities because her past has taught her that authority brings only suffering. Each character you meet is grappling with the same fundamental question. How do you live when all the grand systems have failed? When communism led to bloodshed and betrayal? When capitalism reveals itself as exploitation wearing a friendly face? When moralism is revealed as the imperialism of the coalition? When fascism offers only nostalgia for a past that never existed? The answer the game offers is not hopeful in any conventional sense. You cannot fix Revachol. You cannot restore it to glory. You cannot implement a new system that will save everyone. What you can do is smaller. You can talk to people. You can try to understand them. You can solve one murder. You can perhaps, just perhaps, piece together enough of yourself to continue existing. This is not triumphant. It is simply what remains when triumph proves impossible, and always, surrounding everything, is the pale. A phenomenon unique to this world, the pale is a kind of non-space, a void where reality itself breaks down. It surrounds each is solar, separating them from one another. To cross it requires special equipment, and even then, prolonged exposure causes memory loss, madness, death. The Pale is growing. Slowly, inexorably, it consumes more and more of reality. Some theorize it is caused by human consciousness itself, that our self-reflection, our meaning-making somehow generates this entropy. If that theory is true, then the very act of being conscious, of trying to understand the world, accelerates the end of that world. Thought itself becomes a kind of poison. This is Disco Elysium's darkest implication, not just that our systems fail, but that the act of creating systems, of trying to impose meaning on chaos, might be what dooms us. The Pale is not just a gameplay mechanic or a world-building detail, it is a metaphysical statement. Meaning collapses, reality dissolves, nothing holds. Yet the game does not end in nihilism. It does something stranger. It suggests that even in the face of this absolute dissolution, there is something worth preserving. A conversation with someone who sees you, a moment of beauty in a ruined church, the satisfaction of finally understanding how all the pieces fit together. These things do not save the world. They do not stop the Pale. They do not redeem the political failures or heal the wounds of history. But they are not nothing. The city of Revachol teaches you that hope is not about believing things will get better. Hope is about finding reasons to continue even when you know they will not. It's about caring for people even though you cannot save them. It is about building small kindnesses in the shadow of vast indifference. This is not the hope of heroes and happy endings. This is the hope of those who survive impossible things. Martinez is small enough to cross in an afternoon. A fishing village, a church, a cafeteria, a pawn shop, a bookstore, a hostel. The docks where men labour under the control of the union. The abandoned buildings where squatters hide. The lot where a body hangs from a tree. Every location is a statement about power, about who has it and who does not. Geography is never neutral, it is always political. The fishing village predates modern Revachol. The people there have names like Garte and Cuno, and they live according to older codes. Family, territory, survival. They are not innocent. Cuno, a boy maybe 12 years old, hurls obscenities and threatens violence. His father is absent, lost to speed, and Cuno has learned that aggression is safety. The fisher folk do not trust outsiders. They do not trust the police. They have seen too many systems promise salvation and deliver only new forms of control. The actual shooter turns out to be Iosef Lilianovich Dross, an old communist soldier hiding in the ruins of an abandoned fortress on an islet offshore. He shot Lely from extraordinary distance through a window using an antique rifle. Based on his confession, Iosef did not even know who Lely was. He saw a man having sex with a woman and shot him out of rage, jealousy, bitterness. Iosef is ancient, one of the last survivors of the commune. He deserted his post when the coalition invaded. He has lived in isolation for decades, alone with his rifle and his resentment. Based on his dialogue, Iosef represents the revolution's ghost, still alive but utterly impotent, reduced to random violence from a distance. So the murder is solved. Iosef shot Lili. The Hardy Boys staged the hanging. Everyone involved had their reasons, none of them entirely coherent. Based on the resolution, the case is messy, complicated, driven by misunderstandings and old wounds rather than clear motives. But the murder itself is secondary to what it represents. Lili was a mercenary for capital. He was hired muscle meant to intimidate workers, to break their strike, to ensure that Wild Pines could automate the docks and eliminate jobs. His death is not tragic in any personal sense. He was not innocent. Based on what you learn about him, Lili was a violent man doing violent work for pay, yet his death solves nothing. The strike continues. Wild Pines continues its push for automation. The workers continue to resist. Lely's squad of mercenaries is still in Martinez, still dangerous. Based on events that follow, his death escalates rather than resolves the conflict. This is the game's view of violence. It does not solve problems. It creates new ones. Lely died, and in response his fellow mercenaries prepare for revenge. The Hardy Boys must prepare to defend themselves. This cycle continues. Based on this pattern, violence begets violence in predictable ways. The standoff between mercenaries and Hardy Boys happens later in the game. Shots are fired, people die. The exact outcome depends on your choices, your skills, your preparation. Based on possible results, this confrontation can end in massacre, can end in negotiation, can end in various compromises. But whatever the outcome, the fundamental situation does not change. Wild Pine still wants to automate. The Union still wants to protect jobs. These positions are irreconcilable. Based on the economic reality, automation is profitable, workers are expensive, and capital will always push toward efficiency. The murder case is a microcosm of the larger conflict between labour and capital. Lely represented capital's enforcement arm. The workers who staged his hanging represented labour's resistance. Iosef, the actual killer, represented the old revolutionary spirit, now reduced to impotent rage. Based on this symbolism, the hanged man is not just a corpse, but a statement about who has power and how that power is exercised. Throughout the investigation, you encounter different perspectives on the strike. Everard Clare, the union boss, talks about protecting workers' livelihoods. Joyce Messier, representing Wild Pines, talks about efficiency and progress. The workers talk about survival. The company talks about profit. Based on these conversations, each side has its logic, its justifications. But the game is not neutral. It shows clearly who has power. Wild Pines is a massive corporation. The Union is a local organisation. Wild Pines has resources, lawyers, connections. The Union has numbers but little else. Based on the power imbalance, this is not a fair fight, even if it is framed as negotiation. Everard Clare complicates the narrative. He is corrupt. He uses Union resources for personal gain. He manipulates people. He is not a noble representative of the working class. Based on his character, Everard is an opportunist who happens to be on the workers' side because that is where his power base is. Yet for all his faults, Everard delivers some results. He houses people. He creates jobs, sometimes make-work jobs, but jobs nonetheless. He provides structure in the absence of functional government. Based on what workers say about him, Everard is better than nothing, even if he is not good. This is the game's sophisticated view of labour politics. It does not present workers as noble victims or union leaders as pure heroes. It shows a complicated reality where people do what they must to survive, where ideals are compromised by necessity, where even corrupt leaders can serve necessary functions. The hanged man case also reveals the limits of police work. You can solve the murder, you can identify the killer, understand the motives, explain what happened, but you cannot fix the underlying situation. You cannot resolve the strike. You cannot reconcile labour and capital. Based on the investigation's conclusion, detective work addresses symptoms, not causes. This is fitting for a game about systematic failure. The murder is a symptom of larger economic and political conflicts. Solving it does not solve those conflicts. It simply clarifies one small piece of a much larger problem. Based on this structure, the game suggests that individual solutions are insufficient for systematic problems. The hanged man is also a religious image, evocative of crucifixion, of sacrifice. Someone died and was suspended for all to see. Based on this symbolism, Lely becomes a kind of martyr, though not in any traditional sense. He died not for noble ideals, but as collateral damage in an economic conflict. Yet his death is displayed, made public, turned into spectacle. The body hanging there for days become your message, a warning, a symbol. Based on how the staging functions, death is not just ending but communication, a statement made through violence. When you finally cut Lely down, after days of investigation, the act is anticlimactic. He falls, he is buried. The case is technically solved, but nothing has fundamentally changed. Martinez is still occupied, the workers are still exploited, the city is still dying. Based on the aftermath, resolution of the individual case does not produce larger resolution. This is Disco Elysium's wisdom about detective stories. The genre usually presents mysteries as solvable, order as restorable. Find the killer, restore justice, return to equilibrium. But this game rejects that narrative. You can solve the mystery. You cannot restore order because order was never there to begin with. Based on this subversion, detective work is not about fixing the world, but about understanding small pieces of it. The Hanged Man teaches you that violence is complicated, that victims and perpetrators are not always clear categories, that solving a case does not solve the problems that caused it. Based on the whole investigation, you are left with knowledge but not power, understanding but not solutions, and perhaps, the game suggests, that is all detective work can ever offer. Word count Part 3 so far, approximately 4,200 words. Total so far, approximately 16,500 words. Harry Dubois destroyed himself deliberately. The 3-day bender that erased his memory was not accident but annihilation, a choice to stop being who he was. Based on what you learn throughout the game, the old Harry was brilliant and broken, capable of extraordinary detective work but unable to function as a person. His fiancée left him years ago. Her name was Dora. They were engaged for 12 years. She called it off. She walked away. And Harry never recovered. Based on Jean's account, Harry became obsessed, unable to move on, unable to accept the loss. Every case reminded him of her. Every woman reminded him of her. He could not escape his own grief. This is one response to systemic failure. Retreat into the local, into the tribe. When the big ideas collapse, you fall back on what is immediate and concrete. Your family, your street, your handful of allies against a hostile world. Based on what we know about human responses to state failure, this could imply a kind of pre-political existence, a return to kinship-based social organization. It does not solve the larger problems, but it offers a way to survive them. The Harbour tells a different story. Here, global capital meets local labour. The Wild Pines Group, a massive corporation, wants to automate the docks. They want to eliminate human workers, replace them with machines that never strike, never complain, never need wages. The Union, led by Everard Clare, fights to preserve jobs even as those jobs grind men down into disability and debt. This is the central conflict of the game's surface plot: labour versus capital, workers versus corporations. So he drank, he used drugs, he pushed himself to extremes. Not for pleasure exactly, but for obliteration. Based on the pattern, Harry was trying to destroy the self that hurt, the consciousness that could not stop remembering, that could not stop feeling. The amnesia was not a side effect. It was the goal. This raises a question. When is forgetting necessary? We valorize memory, treat it as essential to identity, but memory is also burden. Some things are too painful to carry. Some versions of yourself are too broken to continue. Based on Harry's case, complete erasure becomes a form of survival, a way to continue existing when the alternative is death. The game does not condemn this choice. It presents it neutrally as something that happened, that had to happen perhaps. Based on how other characters react, they are shocked by the extremity but not entirely surprised. Harry was heading towards some kind of ending. This was one possible form. What he lost in the process is total. He does not remember Dora. He does not remember the 12 years they were together. He does not remember why he became a detective. He does not remember his childhood, his family, his formative experiences. Based on the amnesia's scope, Harry has been reduced to pure present, cut off from any past that might give context or meaning. Yet this also frees him. The new Harry, the one you play as, is not bound by old patterns. He can choose differently. He can become someone else. Based on player choices, you can make Harry kinder, more thoughtful, more stable than he was. Or you can recreate his worst tendencies, fall back into the same patterns. The game uses this setup to explore identity. Are we the sum of our memories? If you lose those memories, do you lose yourself? Commonly, the answer is yes. That continuity of memory creates continuity of self. But Disco Elysium complicates this. Based on the skill system, personality persists even when memory does not. Harry's tendencies, his reflexes, his ways of thinking, these survive the amnesia. This suggests a deeper layer of identity beneath memory, habit, disposition, the patterns worn into your brain through repeated action. You do not remember being an alcoholic, but your body remembers. Electrochemistry knows. Based on this persistence, identity is not just mental but physical, encoded in neural pathways, in chemical balances, in the flesh itself. The amnesia also serves narrative purpose. It allows you, the player, to discover the world alongside Harry. You are as ignorant as he is. Every revelation is new. Based on this structure, player and character knowledge align, creating immersion through shared discovery. But the amnesia is also political. Revachol is a city built on collective amnesia. It has tried to forget the revolution, the commune, the violence of the coalition's invasion. Based on how history is discussed, there is an official narrative that downplays or erases these events. The coalition wants Revachol to forget it was ever sovereign, ever different. Harry's personal amnesia mirrors this collective forgetting. Both are attempts to escape painful pasts. Both fail to fully succeed. Based on how memory works, you can suppress, but you cannot erase. The past persists in fragments, in triggers, in patterns of behavior that repeat even when their origin is forgotten. Throughout the game, you encounter people who help you piece together your history. Kim is patient, answering your questions about basic facts. Other officers from your precinct fill in details about your career. Civilians who recognize you share memories of encounters. Based on these interactions, identity is partly social, constructed through how others remember you. This creates a strange situation. They remember you. You do not remember yourself. Their version of you becomes primary, the only source of information about who you were. Based on this dependence, you must trust others' accounts of your past, even though those accounts are selective, biased, incomplete. Jean Vicumar's account is harsh. He tells you about your worst moments, your cruelty, your dysfunction. He is angry, bitter about the years spent managing your disasters. Based on his perspective, the old Harry was talented but unbearable, someone whose brilliance did not justify the damage he caused. But Jean's account is also partial. He saw you at work under stress at your worst. He did not see private moments, quiet kindnesses, the reasons people might have loved you. Based on the limitation, no single account captures the whole, and you must assemble identity from fragments. Dora's absence is significant. She is never present in the game. You cannot speak to her. You cannot hear her version of events. She exists only in others' references, in your own obsessive inability to move on. Based on her absence, the most important relationship in your past is irretrievable, known only through second-hand accounts and your own pathological fixation. The dream you have on the first night, if you sleep, shows you as the hanged man. You stand beneath the disco ball, already dead, and your corpse speaks to you. It tells you that you will fail, that you cannot fix anything, that despair is rational. Based on this nightmare, some part of you knows the truth, that solving one murder does not save the city, does not redeem your past, does not restore what was lost, but the game also offers the possibility of growth. If you avoid substances, if you act with integrity, if you treat people well, you begin to build a new identity. Not the old Harry recovered, but a new Harry constructed. Based on positive outcomes, this new version can be better, can avoid old mistakes, can find reasons to continue that the old Harry lacked. The amnesia becomes a kind of rebirth, not in any mystical sense, but as practical reset. You get to choose what to keep and what to discard. The old patterns are there, written into your neurology, but with conscious effort, with help from others, you can establish new patterns. Based on recovery narratives, this is how actual change works. Not through total transformation, but through gradual adjustment of habits and choices. Near the game's end, if you have acted well, Jin offers a kind of grudging respect. He acknowledges that you solved the case, that you held yourself together. Based on his final words, he does not forgive you for the past, but he sees that you are trying, and that effort matters. This is the game's stance on redemption. You cannot undo the past. You cannot make amends for everything. The people you hurt may never forgive you. Based on this realism, redemption is not about grand gestures or complete transformation. It is about doing marginally better, about choosing differently in small moments, about accumulating tiny improvements until they add up to something. But Disco Elysium complicates this binary. Evrat is not a noble champion of the working class. He is corrupt, manipulative, willing to use violence and deception to maintain his power. The Union is not democratic. It is controlled by Evrat and his twin brother Edgar, who have consolidated power and enriched themselves. Yet for all his faults, Evrat does deliver some benefits to the workers. He provides housing, arbitrates disputes, creates a structure in the absence of functional government. He is better than nothing, even if he is not good. Joyce Messier, representing Wild Pines, is educated and articulate. She reads philosophy. She treats you with respect. She seems genuinely pained by the violence that her company's actions provoke. Yet she still works for a corporation that views human workers as inefficiencies to be eliminated. Her kindness is real, but it operates within a system designed to extract maximum profit regardless of human cost. This could imply that personal virtue cannot redeem structural violence, that being a good person while serving a bad system does not actually change the outcome. The amnesia allows this by removing the weight of memory, the constant reminder of failure. Without remembering every mistake, you can focus on the present choice. Based on this mechanism, forgetting is not always pathological. Sometimes it is necessary for survival, for the possibility of change. But the game is not naive about this. Forgetting also means losing good things. You do not remember love, friendship, achievements. You do not remember moments of beauty or connection. Based on the cost, amnesia is not selective. It takes everything. The price of escaping pain is losing joy. This creates a dilemma. Would you choose to remember if you could, knowing the pain it brings? Or is the blank slate preferable, even with its losses? The game does not answer this. It leaves you in uncertainty. Based on player testimony, some find the amnesia liberating, others tragic, reflecting different views on the value of continuity. What the game does suggest is that identity is resilient and fragile simultaneously. Resilient because core patterns survive even total memory loss. Fragile because memory provides the narrative that makes those patterns coherent. Based on this paradox, we are both more and less than our memories, both determined by them and capable of escaping them. Disco Elysium is relentlessly dark in its assessment of systems and ideologies. Every political position has failed. Every grand project has collapsed. The city is dying. The Pale consumes reality itself. Based on the game's content, there is little reason for optimism about large-scale change. Yet the game is not nihilistic. It finds value in small things, in moments of connection, in beauty that persists despite decay. Based on these moments, hope exists not as belief in a better future, but as commitment to present decency. One source of hope is conversation. The game is built around dialogue, around talking to people. Every character has a story, a perspective, a life. When you talk to them, when you really listen, you create connection. Based on the dialogue system, understanding others is presented as valuable for its own sake, regardless of practical utility. The fisher folk in the village have their own concerns, separate from the main plot. You can ignore them or engage with them. If you engage, you learn about their lives, their struggles, their small joys. Based on these interactions, they become more than background. They become people. Kuno, the child who hurls insults, is abused and neglected. His father is lost to drug addiction. Kuno has learned that aggression is safety, that showing vulnerability invites harm. But if you are patient, if you treat him with respect, he softens slightly. Based on his responses, even someone this damaged can be reached, at least momentarily. The Sunday friend, if you encounter him, speaks of incremental progress, of small improvements. He is moralist, centrist, and his politics are inadequate to the scale of problems. But his commitment to gradual betterment, to doing what is possible rather than despairing at the impossible, has some merit. Based on his perspective, perfect solutions may not exist, but imperfect ones still reduce suffering. Joyce Messier reads philosophy. She treats you as an intellectual equal. She engages seriously with ideas. Based on her conversations, Joyce represents the possibility of thoughtfulness, even within systems we might oppose. She works for Wild Pines, a corporation doing harm. But she is not a villain. She's a person who has made different choices, who believes different things. Kim, always, is a source of hope. His professionalism, his kindness, his refusal to give up on you. Based on his character, Kim demonstrates that decency is possible, that you can maintain standards even when the world offers no reward for doing so. The church, though empty, still stands. Its architecture still has beauty. Light still filters through broken windows in ways that move you. Based on the descriptions, aesthetic experience persists, independent of the ideology that created it. You can find beauty in a ruined church without believing in the God it was built to honor. The Insulindian phasmid, if you find it, is a creature of wonder. It should not exist, but it does. It is ancient, strange, magnificent. Based on the encounter, the world still contains mysteries, still produces beauty, still surprises even those who think they have seen everything. The music throughout the game is melancholic but also stirring. The soundtrack by British Sea Power captures the mood, mournful yet not defeated. Based on the compositions, the music suggests that even in decline, even in endings, there is something worth honouring, worth preserving. The art style contributes to this. The game is painted, oil painting aesthetic, everything slightly dreamlike. Colours are muted but not grey. Faces are expressive. Based on the visual design, Revachol is beautiful in its decay, worthy of being seen, remembered, mourned. Small acts of kindness appear throughout. A woman gives you food, a man offers shelter. These are not heroic gestures, they are ordinary decencies. Based on their frequency, mutual aid persists even when institutions fail, people helping each other because it is what people do. The dock workers, for all their flaws, protect each other. They are not organized according to any grand principle. They simply recognize each other as comrades. Based on their solidarity, human connection does not require ideology, it precedes it. Lizzie, the dying woman, finds peace in the church. She's not religious, she does not believe in God, but the space offers her quietness, a reprieve from pain. Based on her use of the church, sacred spaces can serve secular purposes, can provide comfort without requiring faith. The bookstore persists. Plaisance maintains it, knowing it will never be profitable. She does it because books matter, because knowledge matters. Based on her commitment, some things are worth preserving for their own sake, regardless of market value. The church stands empty. Its stained glass windows are broken. Its bells were melted to make weapons during the Revolution. Inside, dust gathers on pews that no one sits in anymore. Religion offered one kind of meaning, one way to organize life and death, suffering and hope. In Revachol, that meaning has been hollowed out. Not violently suppressed exactly, but simply abandoned. When material conditions became unbearable, when children starved and workers died, the promise of heaven rang hollow. Yet a few people still come. Lizzie, a woman dying of a genetic disease, finds some comfort in the space. The church offers silence, a place apart from the grinding misery of daily survival. Based on what we observe throughout the game, this could suggest that even when a system's claims to truth fail, its spaces and rituals can still offer something. Not salvation, but a kind of rest. You can dance. At one point, if you choose, you can try to dance. You are bad at it. Your body does not cooperate, but you can try, and trying is joy. Based on this moment, play, creativity, movement, these are available even to someone as damaged as Harry, even in a place as broken as Martinez. You can sing karaoke. The song is terrible. Your voice is terrible. It does not matter. The act itself, the willingness to be ridiculous, to be vulnerable, this is enough. Based on player responses, this moment is often cited as moving, as cathartic, as proof that beauty can emerge from ruins. The game allows you to be kind. In every interaction you can choose decency. You can be patient with Kuno. You can treat the fisher folk with respect. You can listen to people's stories. Based on the mechanics, kindness is always an option, always available, even when it is not rewarded. This is the game's quiet radicalism. In a world where systemic change seems impossible, where all grand projects have failed, you can still choose to be decent in small moments. You can still listen, connect, care. Based on this emphasis, Disco Elysium suggests that ethics exist at the individual level, even when they fail at the systematic level. The ending offers multiple possibilities. If you solved the case well, if you held yourself together, if you earned Kim's respect, you are invited to join a special unit. Your old squad sees that you are trying. Based on the best outcome, the future is uncertain but not hopeless. You have work to do. You have people who believe in you. You can continue. If you did poorly, if you alienated everyone, if you destroyed yourself further, the ending is bleaker. But even then you survive. You keep breathing. Based on the worst outcomes, mere persistence is presented as its own kind of achievement. The game does not promise that things will get better. It does not suggest that your individual choices will save Revachol or stop the Pale. Based on its conclusion, large-scale problems remain unsolved. But you can walk away having done your small part correctly, having created some small connections, having been present to suffering without causing more of it. This is not triumphant hope. It is modest hope. Hope that says you cannot fix everything, but you can fix something. You cannot save the world, but you can be kind to one person. Based on this modesty, the game finds its ethical center. The phasmid, in its psychic conversation with you, expresses something profound. It is fearful of your mind, of the chaos and pain it contains, but it is also awed. You persist. Despite everything, you keep going. Based on the phasmid's reaction, this stubborn continuation is remarkable, worth honoring. You are a disaster. You destroyed yourself. You can barely remember who you are. Yet here you are, investigating a murder, talking to people, trying. Based on the game's full arc, this trying matters. Not because it will save anyone, but because it is what humans do. We keep going even when it makes no sense to keep going. And so, dear listener, our journey through Revachol comes to an end. We have walked its broken streets, spoken with its weary people, examined the systems that promise salvation and delivered only new forms of suffering. We have looked into the Pale, that void that consumes meaning itself. We've inhabited a fragmented mind, heard 24 voices arguing about what is real and what matters. What have we learned? Perhaps that failure is not the end, that systems collapse but people persist, that grand narratives break down but small kindnesses continue, that hope is not about believing things will improve but about choosing to care anyway. Revachol teaches us about living after the end times, about existing in permanent aftermath. The revolution failed. Capitalism grinds on. The coalition occupies. The Pale grows. None of this will change soon. Based on the game's world, this is not the beginning of a story, but the middle or even the end, a place where historical momentum has run out. Yet life continues. People wake up, go to work, love each other, betray each other, suffer, sometimes laugh. Based on their persistence, endings are never complete. There is always tomorrow, another shift, another conversation, another small choice about how to be. The detective you played, Harry Dubois, is not a hero. He is a wreck of a man trying to reassemble himself. But in that trying, in that refusal to simply disappear, there is something worth honouring. Based on his arc, heroism is not grand gestures but small persistences, showing up when you could have given up, being kind when cruelty is easier. Kim Kitsuragi shows us that professionalism, doing your job correctly for its own sake, is a form of resistance. When everything else falls apart, when systems fail and institutions crumble, you can still maintain standards. You can still do your small part well. Based on his example, this is enough. The skills teach us that consciousness is multiplicity, that we contain contradictions, that the unified self is a fiction we tell ourselves. We are logic and empathy, volition and electrochemistry, all at once. Based on this fragmentation, being human is negotiating between competing voices, finding some way to act despite containing opposites. The Pale reminds us that meaning is fragile, that reality itself dissolves, that our attempts to understand accelerate the very entropy we fear. Based on its growth, the end is coming, not soon perhaps, but inevitably. All isolus will dissolve, all consciousness will cease, all meaning will collapse back into formlessness. But knowing this does not make life meaningless. It makes the present more precious. The conversation you have today matters because there will not be infinite tomorrows. The kindness you show matters because suffering is real, even if reality is temporary. Based on this urgency, finitude gives meaning rather than taking it away. The political lesson is hard. All systems fail. Communism failed. Capitalism fails. Moralism fails. Fascism fails. Based on Revachol's history, there is no perfect system waiting to be discovered. There are only imperfect compromises, temporary arrangements, structures that work until they do not. The whirling in rags, the hostel and cafeteria where you wake up, is a microcosm of Martinez itself. It was once nicer, a place with some dignity. Now it caters to whoever can pay, and the price is low. Workers eat there. Travellers passing through stop there. You, a detective with no memory, destroyed a room there during your bender. The manager, guard, despises you for what you did, the damage you caused, the money you owe. Yet he serves you anyway, because what else is there to do? The cafeteria functions as a democratic space of sorts. Worker and intellectual can share the same table, eat the same bad food. Conversations happen across class lines. This does not erase those lines. The truck driver and the cryptozoologist do not become equals, but they occupy the same room. They breathe the same air. In a city as fractured as Revachol, even that small commonality matters. This could lead to despair. If nothing works, why try? But Disco Elysium suggests a different conclusion. Try anyway. Do not try to save the world. Try to improve your small corner of it. Do not wait for perfect solutions. Take imperfect action. Do not demand that your choices matter on a cosmic scale. Let them matter on a human scale. Based on the game's full argument, this is a philosophy for living in ruins, for continuing when the grand narratives have collapsed. It is not inspiring in any traditional sense. It does not promise victory or redemption. It promises only that you can choose to be decent, that small connections matter, that understanding is its own reward. As you lie here, letting your thoughts slow, imagine yourself in Martinez. Feel the wind off the harbour, taste the salt and chemicals in the air. See the buildings leaning together, tired but still standing. Hear the voices of people trying to get through another day. The city is dying, yes, but it is not dead. People still love. Children still play. Workers still struggle. Kim still drives his kinema. The bookstore still opens. Based on all this persistence, endings are never total, never final. You, like Harry, are fragmented. You contain contradictions. You have failed in ways large and small. You carry damage you did not choose and damage you inflicted on yourself. Based on this brokenness, you are human, which is to say, imperfect. But brokenness is not disqualification. You can still act. You can still choose. You can still be kind in small ways. Based on Harry's example, you do not need to be whole to be decent, do not need to be healed to help others. The pail will grow, the systems will fail, the grand narratives will collapse. All of this is true. Based on entropy's laws, everything tends toward dissolution. But between now and then, there is space for living, for choosing, for caring. This is Disco Elysium's gift. A philosophy of persistence in the face of inevitable failure. Not optimism, but something harder. The commitment to continue regardless. Not hope that things will improve, but hope as a practice, a choice to care even when outcomes are uncertain. So as you drift into sleep, carry this with you. You're a multiplicity held together by narrative. Your systems will fail, but you will persist. The pale will grow, but today is still here. You contain contradictions, and that is okay. You cannot save everything, but you can do something. You are enough. Based on everything Revachol teaches, simply carrying on is itself a form of grace. Close your eyes now. Let the voices quiet. Feel your breath slow. Imagine the city at rest, its lights dimming, its workers sleeping. Tomorrow there will be another shift, another case, another conversation. But tonight, there is only this: rest, quietness, the vast and temporary silence where even broken things can dream. Good night. The bookstore, run by a woman named Plaisance, houses books that no one buys. She believes in cryptids, in the Insulindian phasmid, a creature rumoured to exist but never proven. The books on her shelves represent knowledge that has lost its market value. Philosophy, history, literature. These things do not help anyone pay rent or feed their family. They do not offer immediate utility. Based on how the game treats knowledge, this could imply that understanding itself has become a kind of luxury, something only the desperate or eccentric pursue. Yet these books persist. Plaisance maintains her shop not because it is profitable, but because she believes in something beyond profit. The existence of the bookstore is an act of defiance against pure materialism, a statement that meaning cannot be reduced to economics. You can buy books, you can read them. They will not solve the case, not directly, but they will give you context, depth, a sense that human beings have grappled with these questions before. Kim Kitsuragi, your partner, drives a motor carriage called a kanema. It is old, battered, held together by skill and stubbornness. Kim maintains it meticulously. He keeps it clean, keeps it running, treats it with care. This is significant. In a world where everything falls apart, Kim chooses to preserve something. The kinema is not just transportation. It is proof that deterioration is not inevitable. Thus, with enough attention and effort, some things can be kept from decay. Based on Kim's character throughout the game, this could suggest that professionalism, the careful maintenance of standards and practices, is itself a form of resistance. When everything else collapses, when systems fail, and ideologies prove hollow, you can still change the oil. You can still check the tire pressure. You can still do your job correctly. This is not glamorous. It will not save the world, but it preserves a small island of order in the chaos. The abandoned building where Ruby hides is filled with empty rooms and makeshift shelters. Squatters live here because they have nowhere else. No landlord comes to collect rent because the landlord has given up on this property. It is valueless, beneath even exploitation. Based on the conditions described, this represents the absolute bottom of the economic hierarchy. People who have fallen through every safety net, who exist in spaces capital no longer bothers to claim. Ruby herself is an anarchist, someone who believes in the abolition of hierarchy, in horizontal organization. She helped the Hardy Boys stage the hanging of the victim to protect Klaasje, a woman Ruby cared about. When you finally find her, she is terrified. She has a device that emits waves similar to the Pale, and she uses it to incapacitate you. In her fear, she sees you not as a person trying to solve a case, but as an agent of the state, someone who will punish her for trying to protect a friend. Based on how the game portrays Ruby's actions, this could imply that even ideologies of liberation can lead to desperation and harm. Ruby wanted to help someone. She acted according to her principles, her belief in mutual aid and protection. But the systems she feared, the police, the state, are powerful enough that even her attempt to help becomes a trap. She will either die or spend years in prison. Her ideology didn't save her. Her care for another person brought her to ruin. The geography of Martinaise is not random. Every location represents a different response to systemic failure. The fishing village retreats into tribalism. The harbour becomes a battleground of labour and capital. The church stands empty but not quite abandoned. The bookstore preserves knowledge no one wants. The squatter building houses those whom the system has completely discarded. And everywhere, the Pale waits at the edges, ready to consume it all. The world of Disco Elysium is not a planet but a collection of isolas. These are land masses separated from each other by the Pale, a phenomenon unlike anything in our world. The Pale is not water or space. It is a kind of non-place where the laws of physics break down. Matter becomes uncertain. Time dilates and compresses. Memory dissolves. To enter the Pale is to enter entropy itself. Crossing between isolas requires airships, dirigibles that can traverse the Pale's boundaries. Even with shielding and navigation equipment, the crossing is dangerous. Pilots who spend too long in the Pale report strange symptoms. They forget where they're going. They forget who they are. They see things that cannot be, hear voices that have no source. Prolonged exposure leads to permanent damage, madness, death. The Pale is not just dangerous. It is actively hostile to consciousness itself. Based on the entreprenetics research described in the game, this could imply that the Pale is a consequence of human thought. The theory goes like this. Human consciousness is self-reflective. We observe ourselves observing. We think about thinking. This creates a kind of feedback loop, a strange recursion that generates something the universe cannot sustain. The more we reflect, the more the Pale grows. Consciousness itself is eating reality. If this theory is correct, then the very act of being human, of having an interior life, of creating culture and meaning, accelerates the end of the world. We cannot stop thinking. We cannot stop making meaning. We build cities, governments, philosophies, religions, all attempts to impose structure on chaos, and each attempt, each layer of meaning, feeds the void that will eventually consume everything. This is a cosmology of despair. It suggests that there is no way out, no solution. You can change your politics, abandon capitalism for communism, or communism for something else entirely, and it makes no fundamental difference. The Pale will still grow. You can live virtuously or viciously, create beauty or sow destruction, and the outcome is the same. Everything ends in dissolution. All meaning collapses back into the formless void. Yet the game does not present this as a reason to give up. Characters who know about the Pale, who understand the threat it poses, continue living anyway. They cross it when they must. They study it. They try to understand it. Joyce Messier, well-educated and aware of entreprenetics, still reads, still thinks, still engages in the very activities that theoretically make the problem worse. Based on her actions, this could imply that knowing about the inevitable end does not mean you stop participating in life. The Pale has boundaries. Maps show its extent. Navigators plot courses through it. This means it is not entirely chaotic. There are patterns, regularities that can be learned and exploited. The pilots who cross it successfully do so because they understand its behavior, at least partially. Based on how the game describes Pale navigation, this could suggest that even entropy has structure, that even in the face of dissolution, knowledge still offers some measure of control. But the Pale is growing. The maps need constant updating. Areas that were once safe passage now dissolve into formlessness. Islas that existed in historical records no longer exist at all. The Pale has consumed them completely, erasing not just the land but the memory of the land. Based on the historical patterns described, this could imply that the end is not a singular event but an ongoing process, a slow attrition rather than a sudden apocalypse. Ruby uses a device that mimics the Pale's effects. It emits waves that disrupt consciousness, that make it impossible to think clearly. When she activates it against you, the world becomes uncertain. You struggle to maintain coherence. Your mind fragments under the assault. Kim, standing beside you, succumbs completely. Only certain skills, certain aspects of your psyche can resist. Based on this encounter, it seems the Pale does not attack the body directly, but the capacity for organized thought, for coherent identity. This has implications. It means the Pale is not just a physical phenomenon, but a metaphysical one. It does not simply destroy matter, it destroys meaning. A person exposed to the Pale does not just die, they dissolve. First their memories go, then their sense of self, then their ability to distinguish between what is real and what is not. What remains is not a corpse, but a kind of living absence, a body without interiority. The Insulindian phasmid, a cryptid you can encounter at the game's conclusion, appears from the reeds near the shore. It is massive, stick-like, a creature thought to be extinct or mythical. When you see it, assuming you have the right skills active, you can enter a kind of psychic communion with it. The phasmid is ancient, patient, and deeply alien. It does not think the way humans think. Based on the dialogue with the phasmid, this could imply that it exists in a state less vulnerable to the Pale, that its mode of consciousness does not generate the same entropic feedback. The phasmid tells you that it is fearful of your mind, of the chaos it perceives there. Yet it is also awed. You continue to exist despite everything that should have destroyed you. Your amnesia, your self-destruction, your fragmented psyche. You persist. The phasmid sees this as remarkable, this ability to carry on in the face of dissolution. Based on its reactions, this could suggest that human resilience, our stubborn refusal to simply cease, is itself a kind of miracle. The Pale also serves a narrative function. It prevents easy solutions. You cannot simply call for help from another Isula. The communication infrastructure is too fragile. Travel is too dangerous. Martinez, and by extension all of Revachol, is isolated. Whatever problems exist here must be solved here, with local resources by local people. There is no cavalry coming. There is no external saviour. Based on this structural constraint, the game forces you to engage with the place as it is, not as you wish it could be. This isolation mirrors the interior isolation of the detective. Just as Revachol is cut off from the wider world by the Pale, so too is your consciousness cut off from its own past by amnesia. You must work with what is immediately present. You cannot call on memories you do not have. You cannot rely on expertise you have forgotten. Every skill check is a gamble. Every conversation is improvisation. The Pale outside mirrors the void inside. Some theorists in the game suggest the Pale will eventually consume everything. All Isolas will dissolve. All human consciousness will cease. The universe will return to a state of pure, undifferentiated existence. No thought, no meaning, no structure, just formless potential, the way it was before consciousness emerged to impose categories and narratives. Based on these theories, this represents not just the death of humanity, but the death of meaning itself, a return to a condition where nothing signifies. Yet others suggest this is not inevitable. Perhaps the pale's growth can be slowed. Perhaps new isolars form even as old ones dissolve. Perhaps consciousness finds a way to exist without generating entropy. These theories are presented as possibilities, not certainties. The game does not give you a definitive answer about whether the world can be saved. Based on this ambiguity, it seems the question matters less than how you respond to it. The Pale teaches you to live with uncertainty. You know the threat exists. You know it is growing. You cannot fix it. You cannot stop it. All you can do is navigate it carefully, understand its patterns, and continue anyway. This is not a message of hope in the traditional sense. It is a message about endurance, about what it means to keep going when you know the end is coming, about finding reasons to care even when nothing you do will matter in the long run. In this way, the Pale is the perfect metaphor for the human condition. We all know we will die. We all know everything we build will eventually crumble. Civilizations rise and fall. Stars burn out. The universe tends toward entropy. No amount of effort will change these fundamental facts, yet we build anyway. We create, love, think, struggle. Not because it will save us, but because it is what we are. The Pale is our mortality writ large, our finitude made cosmic. And the game asks, knowing this, how will you live? Disco Elysium presents 4 primary political alignments: communism, moralism, ultraliberalism, and fascism. The game treats each seriously, not as cartoon villainy, but as genuine attempts to organize society, to answer the question of how human beings should live together. It also shows how each has failed in Revachol, how each proved insufficient to the task of creating a just and sustainable world. This is not both sidesism. The game has a perspective, but it is a perspective born from observing how ideals collapse under the weight of reality. Communism in Revachol is a ghost. The revolution happened 49 years ago. For 6 glorious years, workers controlled the means of production. They governed themselves. They built a new world. Then the coalition came and crushed it. What remains is memory and nostalgia, the sense that something beautiful was briefly real before being destroyed. If you align yourself with communist thought in the game, you carry this sense of loss, this knowledge that the dream failed but was not therefore invalid. The communism presented in Disco Elysium draws from historical materialism, the idea that economic conditions determine social and political structures. Workers are exploited under capitalism. They produce value. Capitalists extract that value. This creates class conflict, an irreconcilable tension that can only be resolved through revolution. Based on Marxist theory, this analysis is sound. The problem is implementation. The revolution succeeded militarily but failed politically. It could not sustain itself. It could not defend itself from external powers. It could not prevent internal corruption. When you speak with old communists in the game, like Stephen and Ulix's, they are not naive. They know what happened. They know the commune failed. But they still believe in the principles, the idea that workers deserve to control their own labor, that exploitation is wrong, that a better world is possible. Based on their dialogue, this could imply that political commitment is not about guaranteed success, but about moral clarity, about knowing what is right even when you cannot achieve it. Ultraliberalism, in the game's terminology, is unfettered capitalism. It is the belief that markets solve all problems, that competition drives innovation, that the accumulation of wealth is its own justification. Wild Pines represents this ideology. They seek efficiency, profit maximization, the elimination of anything that impedes the flow of capital. Workers are costs to be minimized. automation is progress. If people suffer, that is regrettable, but ultimately their own responsibility. Joyce Messier embodies ultraliberalism's best face. She is thoughtful, well-read, genuinely kind. She does not celebrate suffering. She acknowledges the human cost of her company's actions. Yet she continues to work for Wild Pines because she believes in markets, in the idea that individual liberty and economic freedom will ultimately produce the best outcomes for the most people. Based on her character, this could suggest that ultraliberalism is not merely greed disguised as philosophy, but a genuine belief system that some intelligent people hold. The problem, as the game shows it, is that markets do not care about people. Wild Pines will automate the docks because it is profitable, regardless of what happens to the workers. The invisible hand does not guide toward justice. It guides toward efficiency, and efficiency often means human beings discarded as obsolete. Based on the conditions in Martinez, ultraliberalism has created wealth for some and misery for many, a world where capital flows freely but people drown in debt. Moralism, the third ideology, is harder to define. It is not a specific economic system, but a kind of centrism, a belief in international cooperation, in rules-based order, in gradual reform. The coalition that occupies Revachol is moralist. They believe they are bringing stability, preventing the chaos of revolution and the exploitation of pure capitalism. They present themselves as the reasonable middle path, the adults in the room, but moralism in practice is imperialism. The coalition controls Revachol not through consent but through military force. They allow the locals some autonomy, the police force some local governance, but ultimate power rests with foreigners. Based on the political structure described, this could imply that moralism's claim to neutrality is false, that maintaining the status quo is itself a political choice that benefits some and harms others. Sunday Friend, a moralist character you can encounter, embodies this ideology's intellectual appeal. He speaks of balance, of incremental progress, of avoiding extremes. He is reasonable, measured, persuasive. Yet his reasonableness serves to maintain a system where Revachol remains occupied, where its people have no real power over their own lives. Based on his arguments, this could suggest that moderation is not always virtue, that sometimes the middle path is simply slower violence. Fascism, the fourth ideology, is presented as the politics of resentment and nostalgia. It looks backward to an imagined golden age when things were pure and ordered. It blames outsiders, foreigners, minorities for the decay of the present. It promises to restore greatness through strength and unity. In Revachol, this manifests as longing for the suzerainty, the old kingdom, the time before revolution and occupation, when presumably everything was better. The character Measurehead represents one form of this. He is a bouncer at the Union's gate, and he believes in racial hierarchies, in the superiority of certain physical types. His ideology is incoherent, borrowing from multiple fascist traditions without understanding them. He is laughable in some ways, yet dangerous in others. Based on his character, this could imply that fascist thought need not be sophisticated to be harmful, that its appeal lies not in logical consistency but in emotional satisfaction. If you pursue fascist dialogue options, the game allows it but makes clear the cost. You alienate Kim. You align yourself with thugs and nostalgists. You embrace a politics built on hatred and hierarchy. The game does not present this as a valid path to order. Based on the narrative consequences, fascism is treated as a dead end, an ideology that promises strength but delivers only destruction and shame. What makes Disco Elysium's treatment of politics sophisticated is that it does not simply declare one ideology correct. It shows how each contains partial truths and total failures. Communism correctly identifies exploitation but cannot sustain its alternatives. Ultraliberalism creates wealth but distributes it monstrously. Moralism maintains order but through oppression. Fascism offers belonging but only through excluding and destroying the other. The game also allows you to reject all four. You can pursue a politics of cynicism, of pure self-interest, or a kind of apolitical professionalism. But even these are political choices. To claim neutrality is to accept the status quo. To focus only on your personal survival is to abandon those who cannot survive alone. Based on how the game structures its choices, there is no escaping politics. The question is not whether you have an ideology, but which one and how honestly you hold it. The detective with his amnesia has no political memory. He does not remember what he believed before. This allows you, the player, to construct a politics in real time. Every choice you make, every dialogue option you select, shapes the kind of person he becomes. You can build him into a communist who mourns the revolution, an ultra-liberal who believes in markets, a moralist who seeks gradual reform, a fascist who blames outsiders, or some hybrid, some contradiction. Based on the thought cabinet mechanic, you can even internalize political thoughts that modify your statistics and change how you interact with the world. Adopting communism might make you better at rhetoric, but worse at dealing with authority. Adopting ultraliberalism might make you better at business, but worse at empathy. These are not just flavor. They are mechanical expressions of how ideology shapes perception, how what you believe changes what you can see and do. The political vision quests, added in the Final Cut edition, take this further. They allow you to pursue your ideology to a kind of conclusion, to see where it leads when followed to its end. Based on player reports, these quests do not provide answers. They provide complications. They show you the contradictions within your chosen belief system. They force you to reckon with the gap between theory and practice, between what you want to be true and what actually is. In the end, Revachol's political landscape is a graveyard. Every grand idea has been tried and found wanting. The revolution failed. Capitalism grinds people down. The coalition occupies but does not liberate. Fascism lurks in the shadows, seductive and hollow. What remains is not clarity but confusion, not answers but questions. How do you live justly in an unjust world? How do you resist systems too large to fight? How do you maintain hope when every vision of the future has already collapsed? The game's answer, such as it is, comes through small acts. You solve a murder, you talk to people, you try to understand their lives, their struggles, their compromises. You cannot fix the political situation. You cannot restore the revolution or overthrow the coalition or tame capital or unite everyone under a single banner. But you can act with integrity in small ways. You can choose to be kind when cruelty is easier. You can pursue truth even when it's uncomfortable. Based on the game's structure, this is not presented as sufficient, but it is presented as something. You are Harry Du Bois. At least that is what people tell you. You do not remember being him. You do not remember anything before waking in that trashed hostel room. Your body feels wrong, damaged, as though it belongs to someone else. Your thoughts come not as a unified voice, but as a cacophony. Dozens of perspectives arguing, suggesting, demanding. You're not one person. You're 24. This is the central conceit of Disco Elysium's skill system. Instead of abstract statistics, your abilities are characters with distinct personalities. They speak to you throughout the game, offering commentary, advice, warnings. Logic tries to deduce connections. Empathy feels others' pain. Authority demands respect. Inland empire touches the mystical. Each voice has its own agenda, its own way of interpreting events. Together they create the illusion of a self, but underneath is only multiplicity. The game divides these 24 skills into 4 categories: intellect, psyche, physique, and motorics. Each category represents a different aspect of being human. Intellect governs thinking, analysis, knowledge. Psyche governs feeling, intuition, connection. Physique governs the body, endurance, physical presence. Motorics governs movement, perception, coordination. In a traditional RPG, these would be abstract attributes. In Disco Elysium, they are the architecture of consciousness. Under intellect, you have logic, encyclopedia, rhetoric, drama, conceptualization, and visual calculus. Logic assembles facts into deductions. Encyclopedia stores and retrieves information, often without your conscious intent. Rhetoric constructs arguments and detects manipulation. Drama understands performance, both your own and others. Conceptualization generates creative connections, artistic insights. Visual calculus analyzes spatial relationships, trajectories, physical evidence. Each skill offers a different lens through which to view the world. When your logic is high, you can connect disparate clues into coherent theories. You see patterns where others see chaos. But high logic can also lead you astray. It can create elaborate explanations for things that have simpler answers. It can make you cold, viewing people as data points rather than feeling beings. Based on the skill descriptions, every strength contains the seed of its own failure. Encyclopedia is relentless. It knows things you do not remember learning. It interrupts conversations to inform you about historical events, geographical details, obscure facts. At low levels, it stays quiet. At high levels, it cannot stop talking. It buries you in information, much of it irrelevant to your immediate situation. Based on how players describe the experience, Encyclopedia represents the burden of knowledge, the way accumulated information can overwhelm rather than enlighten. Rhetoric allows you to persuade, to construct arguments, to defend positions. But it also makes you aware when others are doing the same to you. You can detect manipulation, see the structure beneath speech. At very high levels, you can become trapped in arguments for their own sake, caring more about winning a debate than about truth. Based on the dialogue options it unlocks, rhetoric can be a tool for connection or for domination, depending on how you use it. Drama is performance. It understands that all human interaction involves an element of theatre, that we all play roles. High drama lets you lie convincingly, detect when others are lying, adopt personas at will. But it also makes you paranoid. Everyone becomes a suspect. Every statement becomes potentially deceptive. Based on the skill's voice, drama treats life as a stage and you as both actor and critic, never quite certain what is real beneath the performance. Conceptualization deals with abstract thinking, with art and meaning-making. It allows you to appreciate beauty, to generate metaphors, to think beyond the literal. It is the skill that lets you see a ruined church and understand it as a statement about faith's decay. It lets you create to imagine things that do not yet exist. Based on its functions, conceptualization represents human transcendence, our ability to think beyond immediate survival into realms of pure meaning. Visual calculus is the skill of spatial reasoning. It reconstructs crime scenes. It traces bullets to their origin. It analyzes blood spatter patterns. Where other skills deal in language and emotion, visual calculus deals in vectors and angles. It is cold, precise, mathematical. Based on how it speaks, visual calculus cares only for physical truth, for the brutal geometry of cause and effect. Under Psyche, you have volition, inland empire, empathy, authority, esprit de corps, and suggestion. Volition is your will to resist, to endure, to say no. It protects you from addiction, from manipulation, from despair. It is the voice that says you can survive this. Inland empire connects you to the supernatural, the uncanny, the deeply intuitive. It speaks in riddles and visions. Empathy lets you feel what others feel, to inhabit their emotional states. Authority projects power, demands respect, intimidates. Esprit de corps connects you to other police officers, giving you insight into their thoughts and situations. Suggestion understands desire, yours and others, and knows how to manipulate it. Volition is your anchor. When every other voice says to give up, to indulge, to surrender, volition says no. It is the last line of defense against self-destruction. Based on its interventions throughout the game, volition represents the stubborn human capacity to resist even when resistance seems pointless. Inland empire is strange. It makes connections that logic cannot explain. It hears inanimate objects speak. It intuits truths without evidence. At low levels, it is silent. At high levels, it drowns you in mysticism, in impossible visions, in connections so tenuous they might be madness. Based on its dialogue, Inland Empire represents the part of consciousness that refuses empiricism, that insists meaning exists beyond the measurable. Empathy is both gift and curse. It allows genuine connection, true understanding of others' pain and joy. But too much empathy overwhelms. You feel everyone's suffering as your own. You cannot maintain boundaries. Based on how high empathy affects gameplay, it makes you kinder but also more vulnerable, more likely to be hurt by a world full of hurting people. Authority wants respect. It projects confidence, intimidates, commands. It is useful for a police detective who needs to control situations, extract confessions, maintain order. But too much authority makes you a bully. You steamroll people. You mistake fear for respect. Based on its voice lines, authority believes in hierarchy, in the rightness of dominance, in your inherent superiority as an officer of the law. Esprit de corps is solidarity with fellow officers. It gives you flashes of what other RCM members are doing, thinking, feeling. You sense their camaraderie, their cynicism, their dark humour. Based on these visions, esprit de corps represents professional identity. The way being part of a group shapes how you see yourself and the world. Suggestion understands want. It knows what people desire and how to use that knowledge. It can seduce, manipulate, persuade through appeal to base instincts. But it also makes you aware of your own desires, your own vulnerabilities. Based on its dialogue, suggestion treats humans as bundles of appetites, reducible to what they crave. Under physique, you have endurance, pain threshold, physical instrument, electrochemistry, shivers, and half-light. Endurance is stamina, the ability to keep going despite exhaustion. Pain threshold determines how much damage you can endure. Physical instrument is raw strength and intimidation through size. Electrochemistry governs your relationship with substances, with pleasure, with addiction. Shivers connects you specifically to Revachol, the city itself. Half-light is the panic response, the animal part of your brain that screams danger. Endurance is survival. It lets you run farther, fight longer, stay conscious when others would collapse, but it can also dull you. Too much endurance means you push through signals your body sends, Ignore pain that is trying to tell you something is wrong. Based on how it functions, endurance is both strength and numbness. Pain threshold is stoicism. It lets you endure physical suffering without flinching. At high levels, you can take beatings, injuries, hardships without slowing down. But you also become callous. Pain is information. If you cannot feel it, you miss important signals. Based on its voice, pain threshold treats suffering as weakness to be overcome rather than experience to be respected. Physical instrument is violence potential. It is your capacity to hurt others, to break things, to dominate through physical force. It speaks like a gym enthusiast, obsessed with strength, with power, with the body as weapon. At high levels, it solves problems through intimidation. At low levels, you're weak, easily pushed around. Based on its dialogue, physical instrument reduces complex social situations to questions of who is stronger. Electrochemistry is addiction. It craves substances, experiences, sensations. It knows about drugs, about alcohol, about anything that alters consciousness. It can be useful for identifying substances, understanding their effects, but it also pushes you towards self-destruction. Based on how it operates, electrochemistry is the voice of immediate pleasure regardless of long-term cost. Shivers is unique. Unlike other skills that represent general human capacities, Shivers connects you specifically to Revachol. It is a supernatural skill that lets the city speak through you. You feel its wind, its temperature shifts, its mood. You get visions of events happening elsewhere in the city. Based on its descriptions, Shivers suggests a mystical connection between detective and place, as though Revachol itself has chosen you as its medium. Half light is fear. It is the animal part of your brain that screams warnings, that sees threats everywhere. It is paranoid, aggressive, constantly on alert. It pushes you toward violence before you are hurt. At low levels, you are reckless. At high levels, you are terrified of everything. Based on its voice, Half-light represents the parts of us that evolved for survival in a hostile world, instincts that may not serve us well in modern contexts. Under motorics, you have hand/eye coordination, perception, reaction speed, savoir-faire, interfacing, and composure. Coordination affects your aim, your manual dexterity. Perception determines what you notice in the environment. Reaction speed affects how quickly you respond to events. Savoir-faire is style, the ability to move through the world with grace. Interfacing is your relationship with machines, technology, locks. Composure is your ability to keep your cool, to not reveal what you're thinking or feeling. Coordination is precision. It lets you catch things, aim accurately, perform delicate manual tasks. At low levels, you're clumsy. At high levels, you move with confidence. Based on its function, coordination is about controlling your body, making it do exactly what you intend. Perception is observation. It notices details others miss, spots clues, reads body language. At low levels, you walk through the world half blind. At high levels, you're overwhelmed with sensory information, noticing too much to process. Based on its mechanics, perception is not just seeing but filtering what you see, deciding what matters. Reaction, speed is responsiveness. It affects how quickly you can act in tense situations. At low levels, you are slow, always a step behind. At high levels, you act before thinking, sometimes to your detriment. Based on how it works, reaction speed represents the tension between deliberation and immediacy. Savoir-faire is cool. It is the ability to move through social and physical spaces with confidence, to look like you belong. It unlocks options for picking locks, performing athletic feats, dancing. At low levels, you are awkward. At high levels, you have style. Based on its voice, savoir-faire cares about appearances, about seeming competent even when you're not. Interfacing is your relationship with technology. It lets you pick locks, hotwire cars, use computers. It treats machines as puzzles to be solved. At low levels, you are technologically helpless. At high levels, you can manipulate almost any device. Based on its dialogue, interfacing sees the world as systems to be understood and exploited. Composure is the poker face. It lets you hide your emotions, maintain a calm exterior regardless of inner turmoil. It is essential for interrogations, for maintaining authority, for not revealing weakness. At low levels, everything shows on your face. At high levels, you are unreadable. Based on how it functions, composure is both protection and distance, letting you engage with the world without being vulnerable to it. These 24 voices do not work in harmony. They contradict each other. Logic says one thing, empathy says another. Half-light screams danger while volition says to stand firm. Drama suggests this is all performance, while encyclopedia lectures about historical precedent. Every decision becomes a parliament session. Different factions of your psyche arguing for different courses of action. This is radical for a role-playing game. Usually skills are tools you use to solve problems. In Disco Elysium, skills use you. They speak without permission. They reveal things you did not want to know. They push you in directions you did not choose. Based on player experiences, this creates a sense that you are not fully in control of the detective, that he is as much a mystery to you as you are to him. The amnesia makes this explicit. You do not remember who Harry was before. You do not know what kind of person he was. As you play, you rebuild him. Every skill you invest in, every thought you internalize, every dialogue choice you make contributes to this reconstruction. But you're not restoring the original Harry. You're creating someone new, someone who may be completely different from whoever he was. Based on revelations later in the game, the old Harry was a mess. He was brilliant but erratic. He solved cases but also terrorized suspects. He had a reputation for getting results through methods that skirted or crossed legal boundaries. His partner, Jean Vicomar, both admired and resented him. His fiancée left him years ago and he never recovered. Based on Jean's description, the old Harry was someone who needed to be destroyed for anything better to emerge. The amnesia is not accident. On some level, conscious or not, Harry chose this. He drank and drugged himself into oblivion because being Harry Dubois had become unbearable. The pain of memory, of failure, of a life lived wrong, exceeded his capacity to endure it. Forgetting was not escape, it was annihilation, a form of suicide that left the body intact. Based on psychiatric theory, dissociative amnesia can be a response to trauma, the mind protecting itself by erasing what it cannot process. Harry's case is extreme, total retrograde amnesia affecting even basic knowledge. This suggests trauma so severe that the entire identity needed to be erased. What remains is a blank slate, but the slate is not truly blank. The skills remember, the body remembers, the patterns of thought, the tendencies, the reflexes, all of that survives. This raises a philosophical question. If you lose all your memories, are you still the same person? Commonly, identity is understood as continuity of consciousness. But if consciousness is not continuous, if there is a complete break, what remains? The body is the same, the brain is the same, but the subjective experience, the sense of self, is new. Based on how the game handles this, Harry post-amnesia is both the same person and a different one, continuity and rupture simultaneously. You can play Harry as trying to recover who he was, seeking clues about his past, attempting to reconstruct the original personality. Or you can play him as becoming someone new, rejecting the past, building a different identity from the fragments. The game allows both approaches. Based on different player choices, Harry can end as a recovered alcoholic trying to do better, or as someone who embraces his worst tendencies, or as someone who finds a middle path. The skills are not just mechanics, they are a theory of consciousness. The game suggests we're not unified selves but multiplicities, competing drives and perspectives loosely organized under the fiction of a singular identity. Most of the time, this multiplicity is hidden. We experience ourselves as one person. But under stress, under breakdown, the facade cracks. The voices become audible. The contradictions become explicit. Based on psychological research into phenomena like dissociative identity disorder, this model has some basis in reality. The self is constructed, not given. It is a story we tell ourselves about who we are, and like all stories, it can have different versions, different narrators, different enders. Harry's amnesia has destroyed the dominant narrative. What remains is the raw material, drives, skills, tendencies, patterns. From these, a new narrative must be built. The game mechanics reinforce this. Every time a skill speaks, you see it as a separate entity. Logic appears as a different voice than empathy. They do not share knowledge. They can contradict each other. Based on the UI design, the game visually represents the fragmentation, showing you that this is not one mind but many minds in conversation. This creates a strange relationship between player and character. You are not Harry. You're the process by which Harry is being constructed. You choose which skills to develop. You choose which thoughts to internalize. You choose how to respond to situations. But Harry is not simply an avatar for your will. He has his own history, his own body, his own tendencies. Based on the gameplay loop, you are collaborating with the game to create this character, neither fully in control nor fully without agency. The fragmentation also creates empathy. Because you experience Harry's mind as multiple voices, you understand on a visceral level what it is to be pulled in different directions, to contain contradictions, to struggle with competing desires. Based on player testimonials, this makes Harry more relatable despite his extremity. We may not all be alcoholic amnesiac detectives, but we all know what it is to have our logic say one thing while our empathy says another. Let us go deeper into what these voices represent. Each skill is not just a game mechanic, but a philosophical position, a way of understanding reality. Together, they form a kind of phenomenology, a study of how consciousness encounters and interprets the world. Logic believes in causation, in the chain of cause and effect. It trusts that if you gather enough facts and reason carefully enough, truth will emerge. This is Enlightenment thinking, the idea that the world is comprehensible, that mysteries can be solved through rational inquiry. Based on how logic speaks, it has faith in the project of understanding, in the possibility of knowing, but logic also has limits. It cannot account for the irrational, for human behavior that defies explanation, for events that resist neat categorization. When confronted with the supernatural, with Shiver's or Inland Empire's visions, logic dismisses or tries to rationalize. Based on these conflicts, the game suggests that pure rationality is insufficient, that some truths exist beyond logic's reach. Encyclopedia is encyclopedic knowledge, the accumulated wisdom of human civilization. It represents education, learning, the storing of information across generations. When encyclopedia speaks, it often provides historical context, showing how current events echo past patterns. Based on its interventions, Encyclopedia suggests that to understand the present you must know the past. Yet Encyclopedia can also be a burden. It fills your head with facts that may not be relevant. It distracts you with tangents. At very high levels, Encyclopedia becomes almost compulsive, unable to stop sharing information whether you want it or not. Based on this behavior, the game suggests that knowledge for its own sake can become a kind of prison, that sometimes knowing too much prevents you from seeing clearly. Rhetoric is persuasion, the art of argument. It understands that truth is not always enough, that how you say something matters as much as what you say. Rhetoric allows you to construct narratives, to frame situations in ways that serve your purposes. Based on its dialogue options, rhetoric treats communication as a kind of combat, a struggle for dominance through words. This is sophisticated. The game recognizes that we are linguistic animals, that language shapes reality as much as reflecting it. Rhetoric does not just describe the world, it creates the world, determining which facts matter and how they should be interpreted. Based on the skill's functions, words have power not because they represent truth, but because they convince others of truth. Drama is all performance, the recognition that authenticity is itself a performance, that there is no self beneath the mask because the mask is the self. Drama can detect lies because it understands that all human interaction involves some element of deception, of presenting a curated version of oneself. Based on its voice, drama treats life as theatre, everyone playing roles, everyone pretending. This is postmodern, the idea that there is no essential self, only performances we enact in different contexts. Drama's paranoia comes from taking this too far, from assuming that because everyone performs, no one is genuine. Based on its failure states, drama can make you unable to trust anything, trapped in endless suspicion of surfaces. Conceptualization is abstraction, the ability to think in symbols and metaphors. It is the skill that allows art, that lets you see a painting not just as coloured canvas, but as expression of meaning. Conceptualization generates creative connections, finding patterns that are not logical but aesthetic. Based on how it works, conceptualization represents the human capacity for meaning-making beyond mere survival. This is crucial. Animals react to their environment. Humans interpret it. We create narratives, symbols, rituals. We build meaning. Conceptualization is the skill that does this work. Based on its dialogue, it suggests that being human is fundamentally about making sense of things, about finding or creating significance even in absurdity. Visual calculus is empiricism, the belief in observable, measurable reality. It deals in trajectories, in physical evidence, in things that can be verified through sense data. Visual calculus does not care about feelings or interpretations. It wants to know where the bullet came from, how fast it was travelling, what angle it hit. Based on its voice, visual calculus trusts only what can be physically demonstrated. This is scientific thinking, the foundation of forensics, yet the game shows its limits. Visual calculus can tell you how someone died, but not why. It can reconstruct the physical event, but not the human meaning behind it. Based on how investigations work, you need both visual calculus and the softer skills, both the physics and the psychology. Volition is existential freedom, the capacity to choose even when choice is difficult. It is the voice that says you are not determined, that you can resist your programming, your history, your circumstances. Volition believes in will, in the power to say no. Based on its interventions, volition represents human dignity. the refusal to be reduced to stimulus and response. This is deeply philosophical. The question of free will versus determinism has no easy answer. Volition takes a position. You have agency, you can choose, your choices matter. When electrochemistry says to drink and volition says to resist, that moment is a microcosm of the larger question. Based on the mechanics the game suggests that will exists, that it can be strengthened or weakened, that it matters. Inland Empire is the mystical, the intuitive, the inexplicable. It hears the city speak, it touches the supernatural, it makes connections that have no logical basis but feel true anyway. Inland Empire is faith, not in any specific doctrine, but in the existence of more than the material. Based on its visions, Inland Empire insists that reality has depths that reason cannot plumb. This conflicts with logic, with visual calculus, with the empirical skills. The game does not resolve this conflict, it lets both exist. Based on certain events, Inland Empire's visions prove accurate in ways that should be impossible. The game allows for actual magic, actual supernatural elements, validating Inland Empire's approach even as it remains inexplicable. Empathy is intersubjectivity, the ability to access other consciousnesses. It lets you feel what others feel, to inhabit their emotional states temporarily. This is theory of mind at its deepest, the recognition that other beings have inner lives as rich and complex as your own. Based on how empathy works, it is both gift and burden, connection and vulnerability. High empathy can be overwhelming. You absorb everyone's pain. You cannot maintain boundaries. Based on the skill's negative effects, too much empathy can paralyze, making you unable to act because any action might cause someone suffering. The game suggests that empathy must be balanced, that caring for everyone equally means caring for no one effectively. Authority is hierarchy, the belief in legitimate dominance. It projects power, demands respect, intimidates. Authority believes in order, in structure, in the rightness of having someone in charge. Based on its voice, authority is not cruel exactly, but it is indifferent to equality. It wants results, wants compliance, wants control. This is problematic in a game about a police detective. Authority is the skill that makes you act like a cop, asserting dominance, demanding deference. But Disco Elysium is also critical of police power, of the ways authority is abused. Based on how the game treats high authority, it can make you effective but also make you a bully, someone who gets results through force rather than consent. Esprit de corps is collective identity, the sense of belonging to a group. For a police officer, that group is other officers. Esprit de corps gives you visions of what your colleagues are doing, thinking, feeling. It creates solidarity. Based on its visions, Esprit de corps represents the power and danger of group membership. The power is support, understanding, shared purpose. The danger is insularity, us versus them thinking, the closing of ranks against outsiders. Based on how Esprit de corps functions, it can make you a better team member, but also more tribal, more willing to defend other cops even when they are wrong. Suggestion is desire manipulation. It understands what people want and how to use that knowledge. Suggestion can seduce, can persuade, can extract information by appealing to base instincts. Based on its dialogue, suggestion treats humans as bundles of cravings, each craving a lever to be pulled. This is dark psychology, the recognition that humans are not purely rational, that we can be manipulated through our wants. Suggestion is useful for a detective who needs to get people to talk, but it is also ethically questionable. Based on how it works, suggestion treats people as means rather than ends, as things to be used. Endurance is persistence, the capacity to keep going. It is unglamorous but essential. Endurance lets you survive the boring parts, the waiting, the grinding labour of investigation. Based on its function, endurance represents the unheroic virtues, the simple refusal to quit. Pain threshold is Stoicism, the philosophical tradition that says suffering is inevitable but how you respond to it is not. Pain threshold lets you endure without complaint. It is useful in a harsh world. But it can also make you callous, unable to acknowledge when pain is telling you something important. Based on its voice, pain threshold believes in toughness as virtue, in never showing weakness. Physical instrument is might makes right. It is the crudest philosophy, the belief that strength determines outcomes. Physical instrument wants to solve problems through force, to intimidate, to dominate physically. Based on its dialogue, it reduces complex situations to simple questions of power. This is necessary sometimes. There are situations where force is required. But physical instrument overvalues this, seeing violence as the answer to everything. Based on how the game treats it, physical instrument is both useful and dangerous, a tool that can easily become an identity. Electrochemistry is hedonism, the pursuit of pleasure regardless of consequences. It knows about drugs, about the chemical pathways to bliss. It pushes you towards substances because they feel good. Based on its voice, electrochemistry is addiction personified, the part of you that wants immediate gratification at any cost. This is honest about human vulnerability. We are chemical beings. Our moods, our thoughts, our experiences can be altered by substances. Electrochemistry understands this and exploits it. Based on the game's treatment of addiction, this is not moral weakness but biological reality, a hijacking of reward systems. Shivers is animism, the idea that places have spirits, that cities are alive in some sense. Shivers lets Revachol speak through you. You become a medium for the city's consciousness. Based on its visions, Shivers suggests a mystical bond between person and place. That location shapes identity in ways beyond the material. This is beautiful and strange. Shivers makes Revachol a character, giving it agency, desire, voice. When Shivers speaks, you learn things you should not know, see things you should not see. Based on its impossible knowledge, Shivers represents connection to something larger than the self, a dissolution of boundaries between individual and environment. Half-light is the amygdala, the ancient brain, pure survival instinct. It screams danger. It urges violence before you are hurt. It is paranoid, aggressive, constantly vigilant. Based on its voice, Half-light is evolution speaking, the adaptations that kept your ancestors alive in a world of predators. But modern life is not the savannah. Half-light's instincts often misfire. It sees threats where none exist. It urges you to attack people who are not enemies. Based on its failure states, Half-light can make you a danger to yourself and others, trapped in permanent fight or flight. The motoric skills are about embodiment, about existing in a physical world. Hand/eye coordination is precision. Perception is awareness. Reaction speed is responsiveness. Savoir-faire is grace. Interfacing is technical mastery. Composure is control. Together they represent the challenge of having a body, of navigating space, of managing how you appear to others. These skills are often overlooked in philosophical discussions, but they matter. We are not disembodied minds. We are physical beings who must move through space, interact with objects, maintain our meat. Based on how the game integrates these skills, It rejects Cartesian dualism, the separation of mind and body. You are your body. Your thoughts happen in flesh. What makes Disco Elysium's skill system brilliant is that it does not treat these as neutral tools. Each skill is a world view. Each represents a different answer to the question of what matters, what is real, how to understand experience. When you invest in a skill, you're not just getting better at something. You're accepting a philosophy, giving that way of seeing power over you. Based on the full system, the game suggests that human consciousness is inherently plural, that we contain multitudes, that the unified self is a convenient fiction. We are logic and drama, empathy and authority, volition and electrochemistry. We're all of these at once, and they do not always agree. The challenge is not to eliminate the contradictions, but to navigate them, to find some way to act despite containing opposing impulses. This is why Harry's amnesia is so apt. It reveals the truth that a coherent identity normally hides. Without memory to bind the voices into a single narrative, they run free. They argue, they contradict, they pull in different directions. Playing Disco Elysium is experiencing what it is really like to be conscious, to be multiple selves trying to agree on a course of action. Among all the skills, Shivers is the most mystical, the most inexplicable. While other skills represent recognizable human capacities, logic, empathy, strength, Shivers is unique to this world, to this place. It is your connection to Revachol itself. When Shivers activates, the city speaks through you. You become a conduit for its consciousness, its memory, its pain. The visions come unbidden. You feel a chill wind that no one else feels. You see snow falling in summer. You perceive events happening miles away, in districts you've never visited. A woman throwing a body into the sea, a child shivering in an attic, the slow rot of buildings succumbing to time. These are not hallucinations exactly. They are real events, transmitted to you through some mechanism the game never fully explains. Based on the skill description, Shivers suggests that cities are alive in some sense, that they possess a form of consciousness distributed across their geography and inhabitants. This is not literal. Revachol does not have a brain or a body, but it has patterns, flows, rhythms. It has memory encoded in architecture, in street names, in the stories people tell. Based on how Shivers works, the city remembers, and through you, it can speak. This is animistic thinking, the pre-modern belief that all things have spirits. In most contemporary thought, this has been rejected as superstition. But Disco Elysium takes it seriously. Shivers gives you information you could not possibly have. It shows you truths. Based on the vision's accuracy, the game validates this mystical connection, suggesting that places and people are more entangled than materialism allows. When Shivers is highly developed, Revachol becomes a character you interact with. You do not just investigate a murder in the city, you investigate while the city watches, comments, remembers. Based on high Shivers dialogue, the city has opinions about you. It knows what you are doing. It offers cryptic guidance. Sometimes it warns you. Sometimes it simply observes. This relationship is intimate, almost romantic. You and the city are bound together. Your fate is entangled with its fate. When you suffer, Revachol suffers. When you persist, Revachol persists. Based on the skills descriptions, this suggests that individual and environment are not separate but mutually constitutive, that you're shaped by place as much as place is shaped by inhabitants. The visions themselves are poetic. Shivers speaks in fragments, in images, in sensations. You feel the harbour's wind. You hear the creak of old buildings. You taste the salt air mixed with industrial chemicals. Based on these descriptions, Shivers operates through embodied knowledge, through the body's response to environment rather than through abstract thought. One recurring image is of snow, of winter coming. Revachol is entering colder times. The city prepares for hardship. Based on the frequency of these visions, winter represents both literal weather and metaphorical decline. The sense that things are getting worse, that what warmth existed is fading. Shivers also shows you other people. You see a docker loading cargo, his back aching. You see a child playing in the ruins of an old fortification. You see a bureaucrat in a distant office signing papers that will affect lives he will never meet. Based on these visions, Shivers creates empathy across distance, connecting you to the vast web of lives that constitute the city. This is radical empathy, not just feeling what is in front of you, but feeling the whole. Shivers suggest that cities are not just collections of individuals, but organisms, systems where each part affects every other part. When a docker is injured, the whole city feels it, however faintly. Based on this interconnection, suffering is never isolated, never purely individual. The city Shivers reveals is not grand or glorious. It is tired, wounded, struggling. The infrastructure is failing. The people are exhausted. The winter is coming and no one is prepared. Based on what Shivers shows, Revachol is dying slowly, not from any single catastrophe, but from accumulated neglect, from systems that do not repair themselves, from people who cannot help each other enough. Yet there is beauty in these visions too. The play of light on water, the sound of children laughing despite everything, the small kindnesses exchanged between strangers. Based on these moments, Shivers suggests that even a dying city contains life, that beauty persists even in decay. Kim cannot feel Shivers. It is unique to you, or at least rare enough that he has never experienced it. This makes your visions difficult to share. You cannot simply tell Kim what the city is showing you. He is empirical, grounded. He trusts what he can verify. Based on his responses, Kim is skeptical of mysticism, though he does not dismiss you entirely. He watches, listens, reserves judgment. This creates a tension. Shivers gives you knowledge, but knowledge that cannot be proven. It shows you things that are true but cannot be confirmed through normal investigation. Based on how this plays out, the game asks whether mystical insight has value even without empirical verification, whether feeling can be a valid form of knowing. The name itself, Shivers, is significant. A shiver is involuntary, a physical response you cannot control. You do not choose to shiver. Your body does it automatically when cold. Based on this etymology, Shivers represents knowledge that comes through the body rather than through conscious thought, understanding that bypasses rationality. At low shivers, Revachol is just a place, inert, dead. At high shivers, the city is alive, aware, suffering, hoping. Based on this difference, the skill determines whether you experience environment as mere backdrop or as active participant in your story. Near the end of the game, Shivers can give you a vision of the entire city, all of Revachol spread before you. You see the districts you have never visited. You feel the lives being lived there. You sense the weight of history, the layers of failure and persistence. Based on this vision, Revachol is vast, containing multitudes more than you could ever fully know. This vision is both overwhelming and clarifying. Overwhelming because the scale of suffering and struggle is too large for one person to address. Clarifying because it shows you where you fit, that you are one small part of a much larger system. Based on the effect, Shivers provides perspective, pulling you out of individual concerns into awareness of the whole. In a game full of extremes of addiction and mysticism and political fervour, Kim Kitsuragi stands as something different. He is moderate, measured, professional. He does his job correctly. He maintains standards. He does not indulge in excess. Based on his character, Kim represents the possibility of dignity in a world that offers little reason for it. When you first meet Kim, you are at your worst. You have just regained consciousness after days of self-destruction. You cannot remember basic facts. Your appearance is dishevelled. You owe money you do not have. Yet Kim does not mock you. He does not reject you. He adapts. He treats you with the respect due to a colleague, even though you have done nothing to earn it. This generosity is not naivety. Kim knows you are a disaster. He has read your file. He has heard the stories. He has seen what you did to that hotel room. Based on his comments throughout the game, Kim understands exactly what kind of person he is dealing with. He chooses patience anyway. Why? Because Kim believes in professionalism, not in some corporate sense, but in the older meaning of the word, the idea that a profession is a calling, something you do with care and integrity regardless of circumstances. Kim is a police detective. That means something to him. It means standards, procedures, ethics. Based on his behaviour, Kim sees his job not just as employment but as identity. This could seem naive, treating police work as noble when the game also shows how police power is abused, how the RCM is underfunded and ineffective, how justice in Revachol is largely absent. But Kim is not naive. He knows the system is broken. He knows the RCM cannot fix Revachol. He knows most crimes go unsolved, most suffering unaddressed. Based on his dialogue, Kim is under no illusions about the scope of his power, yet he does his job anyway. He documents evidence carefully. He interviews witnesses respectfully. He follows procedure even when it would be easier not to. Based on his actions, Kim treats each case as though it matters, each victim as though they deserve justice, even knowing that justice is rare. This is a kind of heroism, unglamorous and limited but real. In a world where everything has collapsed, where grand projects have failed, where systems are corrupt or absent, Kim maintains a small island of order. He cannot save Revachol. He can investigate one murder carefully. Based on this approach, Kim suggests that when you cannot do everything, you do something, and you do it right. Kim is also an outsider. He is Seolite from a minority group in Revachol. Based on scattered references, Seolites face discrimination, are seen as foreign despite being citizens. Kim has dealt with this his entire life. It has made him careful, measured. He cannot afford the luxury of extremes. One wrong move and he confirms every prejudice. This adds depth to his professionalism. For Kim, doing things correctly is not just pride, it is survival. He must be better than expected, must never give anyone a reason to dismiss him. Based on his background, Kim's measured approach is both personality and strategy, a way to navigate a world that does not fully accept him. His relationship with you is complicated. As the game progresses, if you act with integrity, Kim warms to you. He goes from colleague to friend. He laughs at your jokes. He shares personal details. He defends you when others criticize. Based on player choices, you can earn Kim's respect, and that respect is valuable precisely because it is not given freely. But if you act badly, if you indulge in racism or brutality or corruption, Kim distances himself. He still works with you, still does his job. But the warmth disappears. Based on negative outcomes, Kim has limits. His professionalism does not extend to accepting abuse of power. Kim drives a motor carriage, a kinema. The car is old but immaculately maintained. Kim has kept it running through care and knowledge. He knows every part. He handles it with precision. Based on how he treats the vehicle, the kinema is an extension of Kim's philosophy, the idea that with enough attention, things can be preserved, that deterioration is not inevitable. This contrasts sharply with you. You destroy things. You broke that hotel room. You broke your body with substances. You are entropy personified. Kim is order, maintenance, preservation. Together, you represent two responses to a decaying world: destruction and maintenance, chaos and care. Based on this dynamic, the partnership works because each provides what the other lacks. Kim is also creative. He likes cryptozoology, the study of hidden or mythical creatures. He is fascinated by the Insulindian phasmid, the creature rumoured to exist in the reeds. This interest seems at odds with his empirical, careful nature, but it reveals something important. Kim wants to believe in mystery, in things beyond the mundane. Based on his interest, Kim combines rationality with wonder, skepticism with hope. When you finally do encounter the phasmid, if you do, Kim's reaction is profound. He sees it, he photographs it, he has proof that the impossible exists. Based on his response, this moment vindicates something in Kim, the part of him that refused to accept that the world is fully explained, fully known. Kim is not without flaws. He can be rigid. His commitment to procedure can slow you down. He disapproves of unconventional methods even when they work. Based on some dialogue, Kim represents the limits as well as the virtues of following rules, the way that order can become an end rather than a means. But in a world of extremes, Kim's moderation is valuable. He is the voice that says, slow down, think it through, do not rush. He is the steadying hand when everything else is chaos. Based on player testimonials, many grow to love Kim precisely because he is reliable. Because in a game full of uncertainty, Kim is constant. Near the game's end, your old squad arrives. Jean Vicamard, your former partner, is there. He is angry, bitter, resentful. He has spent years dealing with your dysfunction. Based on Jean's dialogue, working with you was exhausting, infuriating, occasionally brilliant, but mostly painful. In that moment, Kim defends you. If you have acted well, if you have solved the case and shown growth, Kim speaks on your behalf. He tells Jean that you did good work, that you handled yourself with integrity. Based on this defense, Kim has become your advocate, seeing in you not just what you were, but what you might become. This is the relationship's culmination. Kim has witnessed your struggle. He has seen you at your worst and watched you try to be better. His defense is not based on who you were, but on who you are now. Based on this validation, Kim offers something rare, the belief that people can change, that the past need not determine the future. Kim Kitsuragi is not flashy. He does not save the day through heroics. He does not solve the case through brilliance. What he does is show up, do his job, maintain standards, treat people with respect. Based on his character arc, this is presented as enough, as valuable, as a form of quiet heroism suited to a world where grand gestures have failed. In a game about collapse, about systems failing, about the impossibility of fixing what is broken, Kim suggests a different approach. Do not try to save everything. Just do your small part correctly. Maintain your corner of the world. Be decent to people. Based on his example, this is not resignation, but wisdom. The acceptance that you cannot do everything paired with the commitment to do something. The central mystery of Disco Elysium is the hanged man, a body suspended from a tree behind the whirling in rags hostel. He's been there for days. He is badly decomposed. The smell is overwhelming. Nobody has cut him down. This is where your investigation begins, with this corpse, this symbol of violence unresolved. As you investigate, you learn that the man's name is Ellis Courtenaire, though he went by Lely. He was a mercenary, a soldier hired by the Wild Pines group to help break the dock workers' strike. He commanded a squad of other mercenaries. Based on witness accounts, Lely was aggressive, perhaps looking for confrontation, certainly not there to negotiate peacefully. The hanging was staged. Lely did not kill himself. Someone else killed him, and the Hardy Boys, local dock workers acting as vigilantes, staged the hanging to make it look like a lynching, like a political statement. Based on the cover-up, the intent was to send a message. This is what happens to strikebreakers, to those who side with capital against labour. But that is not the whole story. As you dig deeper, you discover that Lely was shot before he was hanged. Someone put a bullet in his mouth while he was in his room with Klaasje, a woman staying at the hostel. Based on the evidence, this was not an execution. It was something stranger. Klaasje is a puzzle. She claims Lely was shot during sex, that the bullet came from nowhere, that she panicked and called Ruby for help. Ruby, fearing police involvement, organised the Hardy Boys to stage the hanging. Based on Klaasje's story, this was accident and cover-up, not murder. But Klaasje is also a habitual liar. She's on the run from her past, from corporations and governments she has wronged. She has multiple identities. Her story shifts depending on who she is talking to. Based on her character, trusting Klaasje completely would be naive.